Hello everyone and welcome to a game a lot of you have requested, and as usual for very good reasons. It is from round 6 of this year's Biel Chess Festival, Praggnanandhaa versus Abhimanyu Mishra. Now Prag obviously the favorite going into pretty much any matchup except maybe a few of them. However, he is facing a very fierce opponent, a 2604 rated Abhimanyu Mishra, who in 2021, if you remember, overtook Sergei Karyakin's record as the youngest ever Grandmaster, and he says that his goal in chess is to become world champion. Of course, that's the goal of any ambitious player, but he's very adamant about it. He's stating it publicly, and well, he's been playing incredible chess so far. So let's check out this game. Prag with white opens with pawn to e4, and we will have some 10 moves of theory. We have pawn to e5, knight f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5. We also have the clock times for this game, so I will include them. Sorry about not including it right away. Could be relevant to this game. You know, that will be up to you guys to decide. Okay. With bishop to b5, the Ruy Lopez is on the board. It's 2 hours starting time. We have pawn to a6, bishop to a4, and knight to f6. We have castles and pawn to b5. Bishop to b3 and bishop to c5. We have pawn to c3 with the option of hiding the bishop on c2 and striking in the center with pawn to d4 and pawn to d6. Even though rook e1 still hasn't been played, you do not want to capture this. You could capture it, but then pawn to d4, and this has all been analyzed, doesn't really do all that much for black. So after c3, we have d6, pawn to d4, and bishop back to b6. We have h3, castles, rook to e1, and rook to e8, preparing to capture and then put pressure on that e4 pawn. So bishop to g5, pinning one of the attackers of the e4 pawn, pawn to h6, we have bishop to h4, and bishop to b7 by Abhimanyu. And now there is a game where pawn to d5 was played, but Prag decides to keep the center tense, and he plays queen to d3. And it is now, as of move 13, that we have a completely new game, and knight to a5, putting pressure on the bishop, preparing to put the knight on c4, also opening up the light square bishop's diagonal. So bishop to c2 and pawn to g5. Now you could choose to move the bishop back, let's say go back bishop to g3, then something like e captures on d4, and it's a reasonable game. But knight captures on g5 is by far best. You will take the 2 pawns, you will have the attack, and you can't ask for much more than this. And Abhimanyu very brave for going for this. Knight captures on g5, h captures and bishop captures, and okay, king to g7. Spending 5 minutes on this. It is the usual way to defend such ideas, but of course you have to check. It's a completely new position. Maybe the knight has a very easy way of entering the game. You know, maybe you have to be really careful here. So knight to d2. We have queen to c8. There are other moves that can be played here. Queen to c8 is a most ambitious one, as it invites the queen to come to g3, but you have everything on a light square, so you don't have to worry about any dark square discoveries. We have queen to g3, and not just knight to h7, putting pressure on the bishop and asking what do you do here. And it doesn't look like this is some sort of a deep preparation by Mishra, as he's burning a lot more time than Prag. He's already down to 37 minutes. So d captures on e5, d captures on e5, and this is the position. Now the position is winning for Praggnanandhaa, but Prag could not find the idea over the board, and he didn't even invest all that much time here. I think he spent maybe 5 minutes on this move, and he played an okay move, but he did not play the winning one. So just for fun, feel free to pause the video and try to don't try to just spot the first move. Try to calculate why it's important and why perhaps Prag missed it. You know, you will feel very good about yourselves. Have at it while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting the line that was missed by a 2757 Grandmaster and also a candidate. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is bishop to f4 check. This is the move. And you might be thinking, well, of course that's the move. What's the big idea? We're just going to capture here, and I mean, we're going to have an awesome position. The problem why it was probably missed by Prag is that after king to h8, bishop captures on e5 check, and f6, you have to capture on f6. it doesn't look like it's a move that should be played, but it definitely should be played. The point being that after captures and captures, you play pawn to e5, which again is not all that easy to decide because you also open up the black slide square bishop diagonal. But now the point is that after knight h7, or maybe Pragg even calculated all of this as, I mean, it is well within his ability. But now there's no other move than bishop captures on h7. It looks just very unnatural to play all of these moves. Like queen h4 is met with queen d7, everything's defended. But here you play bishop captures, and now after king captures, queen to h4 check, again, only winning move. King to g8, queen to g5 check, and if the king tries to escape, you will go queen to f6 check, or if the king goes to f8, you will go here. But even if queen to f7, you will still give this check, and if king to g8, now e6. Because this is covered by the light square bishop, this is covered by the dark square bishop. You cannot lift your rook this way. You have to play e6, freeing up the e5 square for the rook. And that's how you checkmate the black king. And there's no easy way to get into the game. If you try something like a queen here, you first give a check, and after the king moves, now rook e5, and rook to h5 is unstoppable. So that is what Pragg missed. Of course, bishop to f4, I imagine, is the first move you think of, but actually calculating bishop to f4 is a completely different beast. So bishop to e7 check by Pragg. Also a very strong move. It just allows Abhimanyu a very cool defensive resource, and that is king to h6. And again, it looks like you shouldn't be able to defend this. Knight f3 by Pragg, queen to e6. And now how to continue? The only way to keep equality is knight captures on e5. You're no longer even playing for the win here. Knight captures on e5, queen captures on e7, knight g4 check, king g7. Again, you allow all of these nasty discoveries. It's just that there aren't any. e5 only move that holds the position. And now, well, many moves are possible, but like rook g8, and you can't even play knight f6 check. Knight f6 will lose you the game. Rook 8 to d1 only move, and so on and so on. So it is equal, but it really doesn't look like it's equal. So someone will win or lose this. But Pragg played knight to h4. Again, not investing too much time. He spent, okay, no, on this move he actually spent 20 minutes. So you know, schooled by his previous lack of time investment in a critical move, he's preparing knight f5 check, and that's it pretty much. The king cannot go to the g file. You're going to checkmate the black king, and it seems like Pragg is about to win this game, but there is one move that not only saves Abhimanyu, but also gives him the edge and allows him to start playing for the win. Feel free to pause the video and figure it out while I give you a couple of seconds. The tricky move in question is rook to g8. Only move. And now the point is that after knight f5 check, you just take the knight. That's it. And after captures, you will capture the queen. Sorry, after captures, you will capture the queen. The f pawn is even pinned. So, of course, black is completely winning here. So after rook g8, Pragg played queen f3. Now king to g7. Mishra playing all the top moves. We have knight to f5 with check. King to h8, and now rook 8 to d1, but now rook 8 to e8. Again, with tempo, you have to play forcing moves, as Bobby Fischer always said. Now threatening rook captures to take the bishop and knight for the price of a rook. So bishop back to h4, now knight to c4. Getting this piece that's not really doing anything back into the game. You're putting pressure on the b2 pawn. Bishop to b3, pinning the knight, and now bishop to c5. Preparing to bring the bishop back to help out with the defense of the black king. Pawn to a4, bishop to c6. We have bishop back to a2, queen to g6. Already putting pressure on that g2 pawn. We have a captures on b5, a captures and pawn to b4, bishop to d6, and now rook e2. Preparing to double up. Bishop to d7 going after the knight. Once you capture this knight, Pragg's attack is essentially over. Bishop captures, b captures, and now knight captures on d6. This is the preferred capture. C captures, and rook e to d2, putting pressure on the d6 pawn, but Abhimanyu just goes rook to e6. The pawn is nicely defended, and now Pragg is just down a piece. He's down a full knight, and he will of course try. He does have 2 pawns for the piece, as that's what happened when he sacrificed on g5. But in this position, it doesn't look like much. We have pawn to g4, bishop to c6, putting pressure on the e4 pawn, rook to e2, and now a beautiful move by Abhimanyu, pawn to f5. And it looks like you're just giving up material, but it could not be further from the truth. Queen captures on f5, queen captures, e captures, and now look at this. Beautiful move, rook to h6, and the bishop cannot be saved. If you move the bishop, then rook captures on h3. How are you stopping checkmate? Only move f3, and then you capture here, then you capture here, and then everything falls apart. So instead, rook e3 was played, and now Pragg just collects the bishop as well. Now Pragg is up Abhimanyu is up 2 pieces, but it's still not over. Rook captures on d6. We have bishop to a8, and now king to h2. Now, if Pragg is allowed king to g3, the rook is trapped. So if he wins back the rook, then it's gonna be 2 rooks versus a rook, bishop, and knight. You can still play this. Of course, Abhimanyu figures it out. Knight to g5, pawn to b5, and now bishop to f3, cutting off the rook from the defense of the h3 pawn, and that's just it. Captures king g1, rook to h1 will be checkmate. So Pragg is now forced to give up the rook as well. Rook captures on f3, knight captures with check, king g3, and pawn to e4, defending the knight. And now Pragg is down a rook and the knight, and of course you resign this any day of the year, but he already lost the previous game to Sam Shankland, and he was better in this game, and I guess it's just very hard to come to terms. So he continues playing rook to c6. We have rook to b8, and now rook captures on c4. Plus, there's always the possibility of your opponent making a mistake, and if you can, force yourself to play a position where you're down so much, you will lose fewer games than you would throughout your entire life, let's say. We have rook captures on b5, going now for, well, there's nothing much for Pragg to try. He plays rook to c8 with check, king to g7, rook to c7 with check, king to f8, rook to c8 with check, king to e7, and now rook to c4, going after the e4 pawn, king to d6. We have rook to a4. You could also capture on e4, but then just rook captures on h3. For example, rook captures on h3, and that's pretty much it. If you capture here, then just knight to g5 with check. The problem is you have so much material, you don't care giving some of it back. So here, after king to d6, rook to a4 was played, and now rook to c5, going after the c3 pawn, rook captures on e4, and of course rook captures on h3. The line that we've discussed. Now, of course, if you capture knight g5 check, picks up the rook, so king to g2, rook captures on c3. We have rook to e6 with check, king to d7, and he was in this position on move 55 that Praggnanandhaa resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. He's down way too much material, and again, king, you could capture the rook, but knight g5 check will pick up this rook, and that's pretty much it. You have a rook against 2 passed pawns. 2 passed pawns are scary, but a rook is much scarier, unless they're here, or maybe here.